Summit, and it's been really, really good so far, and we've got a treat for you next as well. Before I get into that, just to remind you that there are some more things happening after this. So the marvelous Jackie O from Carl and Jackie O and Gemma O'Neill, they do a podcast together, which if you've not heard it, it is quite a thing to listen to. And they're going to be talking about that podcast, her Best Life podcast, just after this in track 2, I believe that's going to be in, okay? So if you want to listen to that, it's an amazing podcast. Jackie and Gemma are forces of nature. If you know anything about Carl and Jackie O show, you'll know that. And that's going to be on in track 2 after we finished here. And there are all sorts of welcome drinks as well, because you deserve a beer at the end of the day, which is great. Don't drink too much, because we've got a great opening session tomorrow at 9 a.m. where we kind of officially open everything, all right? Good, okay. Let's get into the final session on the Programming Summit. And to finish today, we're diving into what it really takes to make a radio station live and breathe music. Music often doesn't get much of a look in at radio days, and we were determined to make sure it did this time. And BBC Radio 1 have mastered the art of turning songs into moments and playlists into experiences. And at the helm of that all is Haydn Jones, the head of BBC Radio 1. You're going to hear from him in a moment. Today, Alid is going to be joined by 2 key members of his team, Michael Moschel from the Radio 1 music team, Daisy Jarrett, producer of the New Music Show with Jack Saunders, and together they'll share how BBC Radio 1 goes beyond the playlist, creating unforgettable music moments, building credibility with artists, and making music a true experience for listeners. I've long been a fan of music as content, and you're going to hear a lot about that today. There's going to be a chance to ask them some questions at the end, so if you want to ask something, you can do. But right now, please welcome Haydn Jones from BBC Radio 1.
Thank you, Peter. Hello, everyone. Thank you. Yeah, I'm Haydn Jones, head of Radio 1, and we are here to talk about our music policies at Radio 1. Now, a warning, heads up, early days, this is geek. This is going to be quite detailed, what we're going to be talking about, because that was the brief that we were given. Quite often I come to Radio Days, we talk about the big glamorous stuff, but actually what powers Radio 1 behind the scenes is much more than the getting Lady Gaga to come into the studio and do something for us. Great if you can get it, but not so great if you don't have access to Lady Gaga. So I shall start with a Radio 1 showreel, and then we'll get into the details after that.
I'm so excited. Live Lounge is a big part of me being a music fan since I was 13. Take it! Hey, Neva, it's my first solo live lounge.
Yeah, everyone did a great live lounge.
It's myself, the General Kenny All-Star, and another iconic Radio 1 freestyle. Now listen.
Kenny, how you feeling, my guy?
Smooth, my brother.
Another live gig for Radio 1's new music show. Radio 1's hottest record.
Song is just say, be bold, talk to your crush.
Play it dead loud.
No. Yeah, who is that? An interesting choice. Why, Ollie?
It's just sick.
You made one of the greatest albums of our generation on GarageBand.
Radio 1's piano sessions is raw, healing an artist in a way we've never heard them before.
You are definitely the best crowd in the world. And I love you.
Radio 1's rap show. We in the place in New York City for the first time. They won't understand the word I'm saying.
You aren't on stage, they sing.
And I'm going to ask all the fanboy questions.
Welcome to the Radio 1 Breakfast Show.
I'm ready.
Please welcome to Class 6, Julie. I can actually feel the panic stress.
Great idea for an interview, Billy.
Well, disagree.
Got a nice and unpopular opinion there, gonna shove it right in the radio.
He was the people's duck.
Long boy.
How did that happen?
How did that happen?
You're like, beep, boop, beep, beep, beep.
It's happening.
It's happening.
I want to see this. Oh, come on, that's
Cool.
Can I give you a hug, man? Yes.
Thanks, Annie.
I don't.
Oh no! No.
Welcome to Radio 1's Giant Attention.
Brilliant. This is really smart.
You haven't met your match.
Absolutely not.
It's just so ridiculous. BBC, I want to hear you scream this with us, okay?
Welcome to everyone's big weekend in London. Hey!
Should we get this party started, Lulu? In all my life, I've never seen such a big weekend.
The camera's right there. Let me hear you out that big weekend. Plus.
Give it up for Radio 1. Thank you very much. Now, please excuse us that glitzy showreel. It shows all the elements of Radio 1, the more glitzy side of our music, our festivals, as well as our entertainment output that gives Radio 1 the mix you know and love. If you've heard of a live music format out of Radio 1, then you've likely heard of Radio 1's Live Lounge. For those who don't know, here's a clip.
Please, 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 don't prove I'm right. And please, 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 don't bring me to tears when I just did my makeup so nice. Heartbreak is one thing, my ego's another.
So that's Radio 1's Live Lounge with Sabrina Carpenter. It's quite a unique feature in UK radio industry. A live music feature that happens in daytime. It's pretty much just Radio 1 and Radio 2 that do that. And it's definitely an exclusivity thing for a youth music station. It goes out at midday on a weekday. Bonkers from an audience point of view, but the music industry love it, obviously, because of all the listeners that they reach. So I was asked today to talk about not just the glitzy side, but also the nuts and bolts of what we do at Radio 1 that musically sets up the station for what we do. And I love that. I think it's a wonderful opportunity for us to talk about it. Because actually, Radio 1's really about growing an artist's journey. People will hear of the glitzy element of what we do, but it's the journey of the artists that most of our hours, most of our resources, and most of our effort goes on to. Out of the over 230 sessions, live sessions Radio 1 does every year, only around 30 of them are the Live Lounge in daytime. When it comes to sessions, the majority of them are from up-and-coming artists or artists that haven't achieved mainstream success yet. Here's one example. This is German's Ben Bomer featuring Max Milner performing Water on a feature called Radio 1's Piano Sessions.
Can you blow my mind? Set off my whole body. If I give you more time, can you snatch my soul from me? And I don't wanna wait. Come take me where I ain't been before.
These are not about big artist success stories. These are not about big numbers in the daytime. This is about supporting new artists. Now, most people think of Radio 1 and they might think of Pete Tong or Greg James, but in fact, this is where it gets geeky, by the way, so I hope you're prepared for this. I've just noticed that my old boss is here, and even he would be challenged to go to this level of detail about Radio 1, so we're really going there today. So, but in fact, across a week of Radio 1, these are all the brands that we broadcast on Radio 1 over a week. We're a multi-genre station that, in addition to having shows for specific genres like rock, rap, drum and bass, and then mood shows like Chillist or Rave Up, the station has pretty much two halves to its schedule. The daytime one, which is programmed centrally by the Radio 1 music team, and the evening one, where the music is programmed by the presenters and the producers who host and run those shows. Our evening shows are really where the artist journeys happen. It's in the past an informal system that's happened over many, many years, which we're hoping to formalize a little bit more over the coming months and years. This is where we get even deeper. So, Radio 1 plays more than 1,200 tracks every week. The vast majority of these occur in our evening schedule, which I've put up here. We never really normally show things like this about the evening. It tends to be the daytime names. But this is really the important bit of Radio 1, because this is where the discovery, growth, and shepherding of artists and their journeys happen. So the top boxes, this is the best way I can do to represent that artist journey through Radio 1. The top boxes are BBC introducing shows that sit on BBC local stations across the whole UK. Every local BBC has one, and they will play artists from that area. There's a thing called the BBC Introducing Uploader, where a wannabe artist can upload their music, and then if they're lucky, it's played in those shows. Then we have 3 national introducing shows on Radio 1, introducing rock, introducing dance, and then a multi-genre introducing show. They will then take songs from those local shows and play them out to a national level. We then have our 11 p.m. slots. These are curators who are experts in their fields, who choose thousands of artists over a year. Oh, there's 2 colours to this, by the way. Green is multi-genre, and because Radio 1 does so much dance, blue is dance. At 8 o'clock, these are about future artists. So these shows will be sourcing artists themselves and from labels, but we'll also be taking tips from the 11 p.m. shows. And then down the funnel to the 6 o'clock, so it's sort of inverted. The biggest audience for our evening shows is at the bottom. You've got Radio 1's new music show with Jack Saunders, produced by Daisy, and you've got the Radio 1 dance party with Danny Howard. They will take new music from established artists with new artists that have been filtered down from later shows to them as well. From our 2 gateway evening shows, these 2 here, we're then on to artists will then be sent to playlist. And I know you love a good playlist. So I tried to make the font as big as I could on this. So this is our playlist on Radio 1. There are 42 tracks that populate an A, B, and C list. This was taken from 2 weeks ago. For more geek questions around the playlist, I will refer you to Michael when he comes up on stage later. I will stay out of that. But what I can tell you, however, is that our commitment is to 50% of our daytime hours being made up of tracks we consider new. Radio 1 has one of the strictest definitions of new that I've come across from any of my conversations with any other radio stations around the world. New to us is 6 weeks from the point that those tracks entered the UK official chart top 20, which is brutal, because it means, more often than not, Radio 1 is moving off tracks as commercial colleagues are starting to ramp up or even starting to play some of those tracks. But we have a long track record of artist journeys working. This is what Radio 1 does for the UK music industry and an audience. So a lot of the shots you saw earlier from festivals were from our big festival, Radio 1's Big Weekend. So here's the lineup of our Big Weekend for the last 2 years. And you can literally see that artist journey here in our festival. Down the bottom, we've got the BBC introducing stages, we've got the Radio 1 dance stage, our new music stage, and then at the top is our main stage. So in a festival, we represent what we're doing at Radio 1. Tomorrow, as it happens, we'll be announcing this year's Big Weekend lineup, which is happening in Liverpool. And obviously no spoilers, but I already know that 77% of the artists we're announcing this week over the 4 stages were supported by BBC Introducing. And of course, 100% of those artists are Radio 1 stories. So as impossible as it sounds to squeeze in more music policies on top of everything we just described, I just want to share 2 other things that I think are important. So I love this photo. This photo was one I took of a TV that I saw backstage at one of the big weekends, because it's doing a lot here. So this is Charlie Hedges, one of our dance DJs, that is doing a dance anthems set live on the stage, and we're encouraging audiences to QR code themselves through to an on-demand version of that mix. There's a lot going on there, plus the audience are just enjoying themselves. I'll leave our on-demand policy for any questions that can come through, because that's a whole other topic. But I'd like to take you back to the shows and brands that we were broadcasting on Radio 1 across the week, because this is important. In the middle, you will notice that if Radio 1 is known globally for one music genre over any other, it's our expertise in dance music. At the moment, half of our 11 p.m. shows, and as you saw from that lineup, most of Thursday, Friday, and Saturday nights are taking up with dance shows. So in the UK, we've applied to the regulator Ofcom for a new Radio 1 brand extension on DAB+, one being Radio 1 Dance, and the second one, again, you might see this from the brands if you take a look at the bottom two rows, to add to the complexity of what is our mission of being the UK's biggest youth station and the radio home of new music. Young people have shown a distinct want for nostalgia since the pandemic. So we started meeting that need through a show called Radio 1 Anthems a few years ago. But we quickly started ramping up this as separate brands to meet different needs. And we launched these in BBC Sounds. And when we started to see a runaway success of these mixes in our app for under 25s and under 35s, we soon realized that for Radio 1 to truly be a brand for young people, it also has to have elements of nostalgia for them too. Not nostalgic radio stations that are just playing 80s, 90s, or noughties, but a stream or a DAB+ that's for young people in mind. Because, but first of all, I'll say that they exist now in BBC Sounds and they're going really well. Michael from the music team that you'll be hearing from later on actually took some time off the Radio 1 playlist in order to program and do the thinking around the program of Radio 1 Anthems, because there is a real skill there for giving someone who was born in 2010, vomit, the ability to have nostalgia from a youth BBC station. So it feels like it's time to bring in my colleagues now, because I think I've talked about them enough. So I can bring them on and share some of the geek with them as well. So please welcome to the stage Michael Michelle, producer of the Radio 1 Music and Daisy Jarrett, producer from the Radio 1's New Music Show. Thank you. It's a lot of information.
Oh, you were on.
So there's a lot of information, a lot of different music strategies. Let's start with the really broad ones. I will obviously have my opinions on everything, but I am doing the asking today. It says their boss. You can imagine how intimidating this is for them, that I'm questioning them on radio strategy. But I think let's start with, if you think about a public service broadcaster that is funded by the license fee, making shows for young people that's about new music. That's quite the challenge. Why do you think our music policy works?
I program music, I don't make shows, as you can tell. So I think, we're very lucky because of what's come before us at Radio 1. We are known as a new music station in the UK. Every kid kind of growing up in their teens is across Radio 1 because of the kind of connections we've had to all the biggest artists throughout our kind of lives and childhood. And I know from me kind of growing up, starting to listen to Radio 1, I started listening to them because they had my favourite artists on Zane Lowe and on Joe Wiley doing the Live Lounge. That's kind of what we're known for, and I feel like through every generation we're very lucky that kind of gets passed down and passed down. But what we do so well is we kind of bring those artists to those audiences in a way that kind of no one else can do, and no one else kind of, because of our public service, no one else kind of wants to do as well. We play some difficult artists, we play multi-genre, we play stuff that no one else would play before it gets popular. And I think that our audiences and young people who are hungry for music, we know that in the last few years there was kind of, about a decade ago, everyone was like, do people like music? Do they still want to buy music? Do they want to consume music? And we've seen from streaming that people do. People love music, and they still love radio, and they still love listening to new music. And we're there kind of delivering it to them and kind of being that kind of editorial charm that kind of points them in the right direction. So I think we're still known as that and still do that very well.
You should hear the debates around our desk when a drum and bass song comes on at breakfast. And I'm like, really? And everyone.
And I'm like,
Drum and
yes.
bass sounds good at breakfast.
Yeah, it always sounds good at breakfast. That's what you need to wake you up.
Big with young people. That's the answer every time I get. Daisy, have you got anything more to add?
Just that, yeah, what Michael said, if you're listening to Radio 1, you're already a massive music fan. So what we can deliver is just amazing moments with artists. We've got DJs that are huge music fans. So the interaction between them and your favorite pop star is kind of something that you expect to hear on Radio 1. And it's kind of something that only we can do.
Okay. I'll have a question about the daytime playlist, and then I'll come to your show, your brand new show that you just joined, Daisy. Give us a guide for the geeks in the room of how you program, say, an hour clock of Radio 1.
So kind of the standard idea around clocks on Radio 1 is really buffering. Because we have this kind of 50% quota of new music, it's really important for us that while we're playing all that new music, we still have to have that familiarity. We have to bring people along with us, because if you just kind of like stack these records back to back in like one corner of the schedule, people are going to stop listening. You're going to have turn-off moments, and that's kind of what we kind of steer away from. So we obviously build over time and have done over years and decades of being Radio 1, those recurrents that kind of come back around over and over again. And we buffer those in between. So you've got an Ariana Grande. When you're playing the new, I'm trying to think some of the records up there. When you're playing the new Lisa track, you know, you've also got Ariana Grande on there. You've also got Ray on there. We've kind of got that familiarity, those songs and artists that people recognize voice and recognize the songs, to kind of get you in between those more difficult listens. It's kind of I'll go back. So it's kind of what a lot of radio stations do, and I know a lot of programmers will be doing this anyway. And I think Radio 1, because we're multi-genre, and every show during daytime is multi-genre to an extent, we kind of do it in our own way, and we have our own recurrence. We have recurrence and songs that kind of we play that other stations don't, and we do have that distinctiveness. But while we've got that distinctiveness, we're always looking towards audiences. We're always making sure that those warm moments are there, that you know on Radio 1 you're not 5 minutes away from a track that you know, an artist that you love, because that brings you along. Because we can be quite self-indulgent. I'm sure I'm not the only one. A lot of us are music fans. We love lots of difficult music, lots of interesting music. But at the end of the day, it's always about who we're programming for, the audience. And we've got such a big audience, and kind of the breadth of the audience is staggering sometimes. So yes, you might have a few people who want to hear Bring Me the Horizon at 8 o'clock in the morning, but you know maybe the 8 million other people don't. So you kind of have to find that balance between the two. But we want to make sure it's for everyone, and Radio 1 is a place for everyone. And we just kind of work our way through the playlist and programming to make sure that's the case.
Okay. I think the debate around the music is probably one of the things I enjoy the most about the job. I think we don't have a playlist that is so singular that everyone on the floor would be able to call what is or isn't on there. And I think the debate between the music team and the management and the program teams is just alive and constant.
Yeah, and it can be very easy just to kind of get into a very safe place. I think when it comes to music radio programming, that's the easiest way. I think, and I'm sure there's more music programmers in the room, the easiest thing to always do is just like, we'll just play it super safe, we'll sit back and we'll just kind of play the stuff we know everyone likes. But when your hand is forced to play new music, that kind of develops over time, and then you push forward, you pull back, and it's kind of those nuances during the day that does that. And our playlist kind of, again, forces our hand to do that as we work through those different tracks in the playlist as well.
So Daisy, you just joined recently the New Music Show. How's it been?
It's been amazing. So I've worked at Radio 1 for about 10 years, but I've just in the last few weeks joined the New Music Show. And I have never in my life listened to so much new music as I have in the past 2 weeks. It's crazy. Before this, I was producing the rap show. So it was very much, I stayed fully across all of the biggest, latest new music in the rap world. Now it's every genre, so that's cool. My inbox is very, very, very full. But it just has demonstrated like how key the New Music Show is to the music industry when it comes to the artist journey that you were talking about earlier. People see the value in getting a play on Radio 1's new music show, which is amazing. And it just means that we have loads and loads and loads of music to listen to. And we do listen to it. So we sit in a room, we dedicate a couple of hours a week to just sitting with Jack, the presenter, and the rest of the team, and just going through the list of music that we have, giving feedback, discussing the artist. Where are they at in that journey? Is it time for them to be played on the new music show? So it's a lot of new music listening, basically.
So do you still have the similar kind of debate as we were describing for the daytime?
Yeah, absolutely. It's seeing where they're at in the artist journey, really. That's really important. So if an artist is being played in Future Artists, for example, we will have the discussion on if we think it's maybe ready for us to give it a play on the new music show, which then becomes a gateway into daytime, into playlist. So it's kind of a real pivotal point in that artist journey on Radio 1.
And your show looks after the hottest record in the world.
Yes.
When we were talking earlier about your show and what you're excited about, I felt so much pride from you around that hottest record. So do you want to tell the room what it is and why is it so special?
Yes. So the hottest record in the world is literally that. It's the track that has been deemed the hottest record in the world of that day. There's one on the show every single day, Monday to Thursday with us, with Jack, and then Friday it's Danny Howard because it's dance. And there are two kind of non-negotiables. One, it's that it's a world premiere, which happens at 6:30. And the second one, which I think is maybe the most important, is we get an interview with that artist. So we have a real moment with that artist. And it's actually just, as you said, I'm really proud of it because it's a really special thing that we can deliver there. Like, it's a moment for Jack as the presenter because he gets to play a track that he's really passionate about, give it an amazing sell. If you've heard Jack, you'll know that he's just so passionate about music and he gives it the most amazing talk up. And then the artist gets to come in, play that track, and then see and hear the reaction from their fans live, which is an incredible moment. And then the listener, of course, gets like an amazing moment in not only hearing a world premiere from one of their favorite artists, but they also get an interview in there. They get a moment, they can send in their feedback, and it just has become, well, it really is the most important part of Radio 1's new music show. We had a really fun one a couple of weeks ago with Joe. I always call him DeJoe, but it's pronounced Joe Keery from Stranger Things. He came in and did a live hottest record, which are always my favourite ones when you can get them in the studio because it's all about the vibes in the studio. And he came in, he heard the build-up that Jack did for the first half hour of the show, and then came in and then played the track, stayed behind, listened to all the voice notes from all of the fans, there were hundreds and hundreds. We got one of the fans on the phone to chat to him because there were so many getting in touch. And then he just stuck around for the show. He wanted to hang out because he was like, this is amazing. Like, where else can you go to premiere your song to the world and get immediate, amazing feedback from all your fans? So it was a really nice moment.
Nice. Michael, thinking back to the start of the presentation about Radio 1's big weekend, it's glossy, it's big, it probably costs a lot of money for artists to take part. We don't pay artists to be there. So how do you book them for Radio 1's big weekend?
Ali, that is a great question.
Yeah, how do you do this?
How do I book them? Yeah, so to give an overview, my part of the process, so I book the new music stage every year, so that's the second stage. Last year was pretty incredible. We had Charlie XCX in there. Sort of pre-Brat Summer, which is still one of my proudest moments. We've played Charlie for years, and she's had, I reckon, probably tens of hottest records over the years between multiple presenters. We've playlisted her loads of times. She's done live lounge. She's done loads of stuff for us. And then she kind of, Von Dutch came out. It was amazing. As you can hear from the presentation earlier, that was a song playing. And we were like, let's give Charlie a chance. It was her first ever headline slot of a festival like that, which she was really pleased about. She said, which I didn't realise, and then she said in a BBC interview. So I'm staying with it, even if it wasn't. And so yeah, and it was amazing. So I booked that, the new music stage, and it's difficult. And as we know, in sort of where, if we're honest, we're all here at a kind of a radio conference where radio kind of sits in the music landscape at the moment. It's getting more difficult over time, and I think we all need to be honest about that. That's why we're all gathered here, to work out what we're doing next. And asking artists to come to, it's in a different part of the country every year. So Dundee, which is quite far from London, if you're not kind of used to the UK, was an especially expensive one for a lot of the artists. Luton last year, Liverpool this year. And what we ask labels to do are like, look, come and play our event and we're going to give you as much support as possible. Now, we don't, like Alid said, we don't pay anyone. There is no fees exchanged whatsoever. But what we can do is kind of, instead of being like, if you don't play our festival, we're not playing you, that's kind of, we don't see it that way at all. But what we do is if you play our festival, we go above and beyond. Like, and we really do go above and beyond. 3 years ago, we started and kind of, I think, shocked a lot of the UK music industry, where we started just playlisting for 3 weeks the artist playing our event. And we literally split the Radio 1 playlist into main stage, new music stage, and the rotation kind of flipped between the two. So if you were headlining the second stage, you were pretty much getting A-list, and a lot of the main stage artists were getting A-list and B-list, and kind of down like that. And that really turned a lot of heads. And this year, it's finally kind of coming to the fore, because there's a few artists who have albums in May who we got calls quite late. We're like, actually, we'd love to play Big Weekend. We'd really enjoy Big Weekend in Liverpool. Yeah, we'll be there. It's like, oh, when's your album out? May 25th. You're like, I see why. So we've kind of worked it backwards. We want to be the artist-friendly, artist-facing station, and I truly believe that we are. Like, people love coming to see us because of our presenters, because we kind of start at that early point. Again, because we have to play new music. We're playing artists longer than pretty much any other station in the UK, definitely any other national station. And we kind of bring those artists through from an introducing play, a C-list edition here or there, new music show, hottest records, first plays on future artists, all these things. And they remember it because we're real people. And I think that all of us sat in the room running radio stations, we know that. We are still the face of music to a lot of these people. Like, playlists are great. I think the closest thing, kind of Daisy was speaking, the closest thing you can get to sort of that video of you listening in your car to your song being played on the radio for the first time is probably your face being on a streaming platform's playlist. I think that's about as close, but it's not as exciting, and that's fine. They're two completely different things, but that liveness, that realness of it, I still think connects. So for us, when we're looking at booking a festival, we lean on all those experiences that we've had with these artists throughout the years. I'm trying to double check and remember who has been announced for the festival already. But
oh my goodness, don't go there.
Okay, fine. But there are, yeah, I'm pretty sure they have been, but I'm not going
Exclusive.
to. But, yeah, but for instance, last year, Coldplay. Coldplay sold 200,000 albums in the first week in the UK. They are arguably, well, probably not even arguably, one of the biggest bands in the world. They headlined Glastonbury, and they came to Luton and performed a greatest hits set in front of a park. They're in a park, basically. These aren't like purpose-built places. They're playing in a park because of the relationship they have with us, because they remember going on Joe Wiley's show 20 years ago, because they remember the hottest records that Clara did, because they remember them coming in and doing Bleak Mornings with Greg on a cold January morning. It's all those connections, and it's that relationship that we can do and kind of make that means that these artists want to keep going along with us the further down the line. And there are artists that we've supported that nothing's happened, but you kind of don't remember those ones, unfortunately. But the more chances you take with more of your homegrown artists, it means that we can carry on putting on these festivals for as long as it's financially viable to the artists and to the labels, to be completely kind of blunt and honest about it. But for now, we're in a really good place. We've got another, how many artists is it? I think it's 42 on the main two stages. And
I actually haven't counted this yet.
I think it's 42 on the two stages that the music team book. So I book it underneath my editor, Matt Fincham, and the head of music, Chris Price, and they kind of do the main stage and the headliners and stuff. And it's a lot. That's a lot to ask for, and there's a lot of playlist real estate that's used up throughout the year, because you have to think, we then have to support those 42 artists for the rest of the year usually. And they're usually artists we're going to support anyway, but it's a lot. It's a big commitment from our side and a huge financial commitment from theirs as well.
Okay, thank you. Daisy, how do you program your new music show? Because you're probably have the biggest audience of a show on Radio 1 that's not centrally programmed. What's the process?
Yes. So every show that I've worked on before this one, and probably most people in this room, will have all the music scheduled in front of them that they've already decided they're going to play before they start the show that night. And that's how I've always worked. So when I took over this show a few weeks ago, I was very shocked to discover that that's not actually the way that this show is programmed. So there are a few mainstays that are in every show. So there's the hottest record, which is played twice. There's a tune of the week. There's any first plays. And then last night's hottest will get played on that show. Everything else is sort of sectioned out into kind of categories of when they were first played by us. So 1 to 6 weeks old. The first half hour of the show is very much keeping it warm and accessible because we're carrying through those daytime listeners into specialist. So the kind of thing you'll hear in that first half hour is tracks from big returning artists, tracks that have been added to the Radio 1 C list, so people would have heard a bit of it in daytime. So it's kept really warm and accessible to help bring those listeners through into our show. And then the hottest record at 6:30. And then after that, it's literally, Jack likes to basically work his way through this huge list of music that we've got in our schedule. I texted him and asked, why have you done the show in this way? Even though I kind of know the answer, but I thought it's better in his words than in my own. And he said, we want to give the audience a tailor-made experience, one where the music reflects the mood of their day. You can't predict how you're going to feel at 6 p.m, so the best thing to do is do it in the moment. It also gives you the freedom to change tact and be reactive. So he really hops around that schedule. We don't know exactly what we're going to play at the top of the show, but it does mean that you get a really interestingly scheduled show that matches the mood of the nation, which is what we're trying to do.
That is bonkers.
It's mental.
And excuse me, everyone.
It actually makes it weird
this.
when you know that and then you listen to the show. It actually
all
makes
makes
for a really
sense.
strange.
As a listener, it makes sense now.
Management question here. How do you know? How do you know it's the nation's mood, not Jack's mood?
Because we get a lot of interaction.
Oh, really?
We get loads of interaction, and we know that on a Monday you sort of want a bit of an injection of energy. I love it when there's a hottest record on a Monday that's like a big drum and bass tune, or like something that's
Drum and bass again, everyone.
Or a big hip hop tune, anything. Kind of a bit of an injection of energy on a Monday is always really nice. We know that on Thursday it's likely to be something like big and new and exciting. We kind of feel like maybe in hour 2, a lot of the time, that last half hour is where we'll schedule slightly newer stuff to our listeners. Like there's ways to kind of match, I guess, what the mood is of the day, because we are also real people living in the real world with real listeners that are telling us exactly how they feel.
I feel I'm going to move on from that topic then now. And last question for me. You're hearing the DJ buy-in, is everything in the new music show. You schedule the music centrally for daytime, which is 90% of our listeners. So how do you is DJ buy-in important in daytime? And if so, how do we achieve it?
It is important. Not the most important thing, to be completely honest with you. I think that allowing your presenters to have kind of their own music taste and their own sort of passion for tracks within limits is extremely important. And it does. I mean, you can't do any better than sort of when Greg, when he really loves something, plays it and sells it to the nation, and everyone goes, and you stop and you go, wow, this is amazing. And it's kind of that special moment. And one I always think back to was when he made Sam Fender Dead Boys, which is like a very kind of like deep, meaningful song about sort of like male suicide and sort of the problems going on in sort of the northeast of England around kind of young men at that point in time. And Greg stops everyone, and then you listen and you buy into it. Like that only works if a presenter is passionate about that. But those songs also only work in those places where they have the opportunity to be talked up, to be given context, to have that passion put behind it. If you just put that anywhere else, it wouldn't work. But to have that presenter buy-in on daytime is amazing. And then with the specialist shows as well, they give us our credibility, to be honest with you, and that is how it's always worked. I mean, the history of amazing sort of curators and tastemakers at Radio 1 is like longer than we probably have time to talk about right now. I mean, there's a whole wing of a building named after one at the BBC. I mean, that's how far this goes. So that kind of coming through to daytime is really important, because also the Radio 1 presenters all talk to each other. They all like each other. They all want to chat. So when Jack's playing something, Greg hears it. The Going Home show hear it, and it kind of flows through the show. And sort of, Aled had up earlier the chart of the artist journey through, and then it sort of stopped at 6 p.m. But that then bleeds into the playlist and bleeds into kind of what the daytime show's like, because it's their peers, it's the best tastemakers in the world, picking tracks and picking kind of the next one up. So it gives the opportunity for them to start that journey. And what I'd also say, from kind of going back to the festival booking side of it, and even just booking guests in general, live lounge, everything, is that those early interactions are just so important. They are the most important thing. It's all well and good asking Sabrina Carpenter to come to Luton when she's the biggest pop star on earth. That only works if 18 months before you got her in to do the live lounge, when, don't get me wrong, she still had 20 million followers on Instagram, but kind of wasn't the mainstream success that she was kind of 18 months later, and Espresso was out, and then she has a run of #1. So that only works if then Molly's interviewing her and getting her on the show. And there's so many of those stories. Like, Ray was second from top on our new music stage in Dundee. She then headlined the festival the next year. Like, those things only work when you kind of look back just that little bit further to be like, are we nurturing? Are we finding the right ones and giving the right ones space to breathe? Like, don't get me wrong, that's not saying that playlists should be full of artists that no one's heard of just in case, but it's kind of the human curation of all of our teams, all our producers, the music team going, there's something going on here, and us sort of trusting our gut, trusting the numbers that we're seeing, going to the shows, seeing the young kids out of those shows is so important as well, because you feel it. And I know we've probably all been to that early gig where you've been there and you're like, this is going to be massive, and it happens, and how smug it feels 18 months later when you can be like, I told you it was going to happen. So it's really important, and art and kind of the presenters are the face of the station. Like, it's all well and good me programming something, but it's so much better when an artist can be like, oh my God, Greg made me Tune of the Week, Going Home made me Tune of the Week, they love me, and then that interaction starts. And one I always think of as well is Scott and Lewis Capaldi as well. Kind of that really happened very naturally and organically on air while I was programming the show a few years ago. And then look where Lewis is now and headlines our festival in Dundee. So
look where Scott is now.
Yeah, exactly. Look at Scott is now. I mean, so it's pretty amazing, and kind of that's why it's so important to kind of start those journeys early and to make sure that we're having that contact early on as well, because it's that contact, and they remember. Artists really do remember.
And I think the majority of the room will have artists coming through nationally that they can support. The one thing I would add on top, the reason why we had that slide about our funnel of artist journeys through the shows is because work we're doing at the moment is, it's all very well and good being smug that you do 1,200 different tracks a week, but how is that impact helping artists? How do we put our chips behind certain artists and really see them through, rather than throwing the net out very wide, waiting for the ones to become hits and going, that was us, you know?
And that's very easy to do at the moment. We've seen sort of TikTok streaming algorithms sort of bringing things to the fore very quickly, and then you sort of having to reverse make artist journeys, which is really difficult to do. If someone's had a #1 record and it's their third song they've ever released, there's not much you can do to sort of back channel that. So there's been a lot of managing that as well, and a lot of, I think at the beginning it was more difficult to kind of bring those people through, and I think that you're right. You can't put your net out so wide that you catch everything just in case. I think it is really down to human curation in that sense, and kind of getting to know these people, getting to know the artists, the labels, to kind of make sure that you're picking the right ones. And that's why stuff like the new music show is so important in Future Artist, because it does that.
And
for
we
us.
do take a lot of care in that artist journey. Like, I sit on the playlist team, which Michael basically runs on a weekly basis, and like, those are the discussions that you have. Like, when you're talking about the artist journey, I'll bring a track in that was a hottest record, then there'll be a discussion with all of these tastemakers and people that sit on that meeting to decide where they're at in their journey. are they ready?
Timing's key at the end of the day for all these artists. Timing and supporting them at the right time, at the right level is as key. Like a spot play might be fine very early on, but if you playlist someone too early, you're then stuck in a 4-year journey with an artist that thinks they're just going to carry on getting playlists every single time, and it might have just been too early for them.
Well, speaking of timing, I said we'd be 45 minutes before we open to questions. It is 4:15. Nick?
Thank you very much. Is this on? Yeah. Hello. Are we on? Yes. Okay. Yeah? Yeah, we are.
There you go.
So much to unpack there. I've got a few questions. We'll open up to questions for everyone. I've got a few questions myself first, if I may. Firstly, shout out to drum and bass at breakfast.
Clearly.
Who's playing drum and bass at breakfast at the moment? Anyone?
There'll be a
Here?
few.
Stations. Okay. Chasing status out of the 8 o'clock news. Why not? You
Why
know,
not?
Why not?
Well, there's many reasons, Nick, and I would like to... Yeah.
We'll play it anyway.
Right. Music research. A lot of stations here will be led a lot by research, and a lot of people have different views on music research in the room. I can bore you senseless in the bar later with my views. How much of an eye on research do you have when it comes to music? Clearly, you can't test new music as much because people don't know it. But give us a tight 60 seconds on music research.
For New Music Show, a lot of it is in kind of that new music listening meeting that I talked about. We'll sit there, and the first thing we do go on is kind of the presenter passion, because we talked about how important that is. But then if we're slightly on the fence, or if we feel like we need a bit more convincing on an artist or on a track, then we do look at data. We'll look at monthly listeners, we'll look at followers, and we'll basically come to a conclusion on whether we think it's important for us to be playing it on that show. The passion, as I said, is really, really important, but like there will be some artists where, you know, it's undeniable. If you look at the numbers and you look at the research and you look at everything that's pointing towards them being ready to come onto our show and be on that gateway into daytime, like those things are still really important, and we do look at them. They're just part of the story, though. It's not the full story.
I just want to, before you jump in, I just want to ask you specifically about, you mentioned TikTok, right? Are there tracks that blow up on TikTok where you go, well, where did that come from? We haven't seen that, and you feel obliged to play it because your audience are consuming that massively on socials every day, and you go, actually, we need to play this record now.
We never feel obliged to play anything, to be completely honest with you. We're in a very lucky position with that. If our audience is listening to something and we think that it's broad enough and wide enough and popular enough and sounds good on the radio, then we'll play it. But just because something's popular on TikTok is never a reason to play
And
anything.
broad is the key, because TikTok is bubbles. I tested this. There was something happening on my TikTok that almost every third thing was this thing. And I went in and was like, this is great, right?
You put your feet up on the... No.
It's cats and music.
Okay.
And sometimes both.
Okay.
And so I went in and I tested this. No one on the floor had seen this.
Right.
It was the biggest thing in my bubble. And we need to be careful of bubbles, and labels will talk of these things, but it's hard to measure broad.
That's really interesting. I've got a question about, you mentioned voice notes earlier. Listeners talking about the music that you're playing seems to be a fantastic way of kind of engaging the listeners with your music policy and the songs. Just give me a little bit more on that, because I love it when I hear listeners saying how much they love the music you're playing, whether it's a brand new song, as you're focusing on, or even an older song or an anthem or a kind of an oldies hour or whatever it is.
Yeah, I love it too. I think it really helps in that first half hour of our show, because there's so many that come in. We'll do a bit of a punt for something, like tell us why you need the music today, or kind of something to spur a few messages and coming in, and then it just brings a show to life. Like when we're building up to this big moment at 6:30 when there's a hottest record. There's nothing better than hearing the voices of fans talking about how excited they are, talking about how much they love the music. And then, as I mentioned earlier, being able to play those voice notes to artists is so fun to do, because everyone likes to hear nice things about themselves, for one.
You can't get a more literal thing than putting your audience at the heart of your output when it's voice notes.
Yep.
You know, how much that sets us apart from a playlist on a streaming site.
Just humanizes it, like the whole experience of listening to music as a group thing that everyone's enjoying in the moment. It just really helps to bring it to life.
The shared experience kind of thing.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay, one more for me. if I may, which is fascinating. Some people in the room will have been horrified at the thought of a presenter choosing, no, not you necessarily, but it was interesting that you were surprised by it, a presenter choosing their own music. Many radio stations actively discourage anything of the sort. Now, Radio 1 is unique in many ways. Just talk to me a minute about the trust in presenters at capturing the mood of the nation and maybe having one free play. Let's not do the whole show like Jack, perhaps. But talk to me about that, because I often have debates and discussions with people at radio stations where they're very uptight about it, and they feel like the world will collapse if a presenter plays a song which hasn't been tested or isn't on the playlist. And I push back quite a lot about that. So I'm looking to gather some support here. So help me with that one.
Yeah, I mean, we are all music fans for one, so we really, as Michael was saying, like, have to trust our guts in that listening meeting when we are finding the new music that we're going to play in the show. Like, we really have to trust our ears and also just listen to the group of people that we've got around us when it comes to kind of the immediate feedback we have in listening to tracks. I mean, we're not scheduled, so not playlisted, our show. So we kind of have a few key things that we need to do in the schedule. I talked about that first half hour of tracks that have come through the playlist or are new to playlist. But aside from that, we just have to trust our DJs as curators. Like, we do have a long history of having just incredible DJs as curators, and that's another amazing thing that we have on the radio that's really unique to us on the radio. It's not an algorithm, it's humans deciding what music to play and music fans deciding for other music fans what's good and what's important.
It's not an algorithm.
I think this stat is right, but I hope it's right. Please don't write it down if it's not. About 60 hours of Radio 1's output is programmed by the presenter and the producer together.
Right.
So that's from 6 o'clock onwards.
And there's a trust there. You trust your presenters because they're specialists in the field, perhaps, and they're
Try telling Pete Tong what to play.
Yeah, I won't do that. Okay, your turn. Who has a question for this fine? Okay, we got the microphone down at the front here, and we can have a question about music, new music, old music, personal taste in music, all of that stuff.
1, 2. Yeah. Hello, Pandelis from Cyprus, DJ Radio. I would ask about music, like new music on small radio stations in a country that is not over 1 million people, and it does not have so much big of a music industry, no much records coming out and stuff. How could your format or scenario help or be applied on a radio station that is not in the UK and doesn't have millions and millions of people to...
I would scale it back a lot, but I would see the opportunity in the relationship your station, your organization would have with the local music scene. Like, if we could do it, we would want to be more hands-on. We'd love to be with independent venues or local labels. At the moment, because the volume that's coming our way means we're curating, if the volume was much less, I think we'd be in there partnering and then backing certain artists, which we would then claim as our success collectively.
So it's possible, even in a much smaller country, because you concentrate on local talents more than international.
Yeah, agreed. So I'd say, even if your general playlist was global, your tracks that you spotted around the daytime or evening were artists that your organization and station had supported and grown through the ranks, giving them national, to your island, level of awareness.
Yeah, great question.
Thank you.
Great question. There's a couple over on this side. Tell us who you are, where you're from. We always like to know that stuff.
Hi, Tuoms, a fellow radio geek and editor-in-chief at Public Service Media in Latvia, Radio 5, that focuses on new music. And I have so many questions and so many points to discuss, but I think the question with the possible shortest answer goes to Daisy regarding the new music show. As a huge fan, I have been always curious about how much information-wise goes in from a producer's side, and how much is Jack? Because he is very passionate and he talks about every single song, and he does not say just the newest single, the upcoming album, but he goes in really, really deep with it. And I have been always curious how much information is given from the producer side and how much is from himself.
Yeah, I mean, the show in general is definitely a collaborative effort, but when you're talking about the prep that he does for interviews and big sales of tracks, that is all Jack, which is insane to me. I had the same question when I started the show, but he is just so passionate about the music, and he'll come into work early, he'll sit there and he will have his headphones on and he will be prepping everything and it's really impressive. And I think on a show like the New Music Show, that's really, really important. It's really important to be when you're a big tastemaker, to be as passionate as he is. But then I think you can hear how much he loves the music that he's selling. If I was just handing him a piece of paper with loads of notes on it, I don't think it would be done as much justice. It's because it's in his own words and he truly lives and breathes it and loves it.
Just in case you can't get your hands on Jack Saunders, your last show was the rap show. So we have 28 New Music Show brands on Radio 1. What's the more default answer? What's the relationship between Kenny and yourself as a producer?
Yeah, I mean, it's similar. It is similar. I'm a massive music fan. It's the thing that I'm hugely passionate about. So when I was on the rap show with Kenny, just because I liked it, I'd be sending him songs like, what about this? What about this? What about this? And it does become a collaborative effort. We'll do prep. We'll have meetings. We'll sit there and we'll go through what we want to ask an artist if we've got them coming on the show, make notes on tracks in case they're helpful to give it a big sell. But yeah, it's a collaborative effort. It's always a collaborative effort. But with Jack specifically, as you spoke about, he is just genuinely incredible at the prep. And that's why he gives it these big, amazing talk ups on air, because he really loves it.
Please don't take Jack. We love Jack. We want to keep
Jack,
him.
one-way ticket to Latvia.
Yeah.
One more question over here, and then we're kind of up to time almost.
Oh no, Simon from Swedish Radio. Question for Michael: how much do you work together with the music teams from Six Music or Radio 2, if at all?
Officially, not really. I think again, it's one of those things that we're very lucky now. We're all based on one floor, so there is kind of natural collaboration, just kind of with the way we've all been put together now.
The speakers compete across the floor.
Yeah, that's always quite fun. But I think, so I know Cam at 6, I know Lauren at Radio 2, I know Jade at 1 Extra, Mandy at Asian Network. It is a community. We all kind of, we share best practices, especially when it comes to actual music programming. Those best practices are very much shared. And Michael Bambrick at Radio 2 has been amazing help with kind of the actual nitty-gritty of programming the records. But when it comes to sharing information and things like that, we're pretty much in our own lanes and we don't really do it, to be honest with you. It might be have you heard this? This is really cool, just as a music fan sort of thing. But there's no real the systems are separate, we're separate. It's kind of, we're all kind of kept separated in that.
We learned something about the Radio 2 playlist in this room today, actually. So I think that'll...
You're welcome.
Thank you. We'll be picking it up back at base, I can assure you.
We've got one down here. Peter Neagle, the head of Radio Days, has come to enjoy your session and has a question.
Yes, thank you very much. This is great. I mean, I see so many sessions, but wow. I have a really cheeky question for Aled. Would you please, I think everyone in this room would like to see Jack here next year.
Yeah.
I mean...
Would you please ask him on behalf of all of us?
Do you have enough energy to take Jack?
Yes,
honestly,
we will work out, the whole team will be put on it. I'll promise.
Can Daisy come too?
Yes, oh please, God.
I'm there,
Yes,
thanks.
Everyone, I'm
if you tell us the next conference is in
no,
London,
no.
I'll
Yes,
be very
I will.
disappointed.
Tuesday. Please just ask politely from all of us.
Oh, that's very kind. Yes, I'll bring Jack, this for sure.
Hey!
Oh, definitely.
Yes. Good. Thank you. Sorry, Aled.
Okay, that was a question. Will you bring Jack Saunders? The answer is yes. We will do our very best, which is fantastic. Let's do one more down here, and then I think we're tight for time then.
Thanks. James Ross from Hong Kong, producer and presenter for the public broadcaster in Hong Kong, RTHK Radio 3. Heard quite a lot recently about the UK charts being swamped by American music. I wonder how you balance that. Obviously, you're trying to bring up a lot of talent from the UK, but a lot of people want to listen to tracks from the US. How do you do that balance?
So we, as a public service broadcaster, have a 33% remit to play 33% British songs on the playlist.
And we exceed that.
We more than exceed that. It's usually up and above 50%, to be completely honest. I think the sort of Americanization of the UK chart, and I think music globally, is kind of a bit of a problem, especially for a station like ours who does really rely on artists coming in to market. And I'm sure all of you kind of will nod along to that, especially those of you in kind of like smaller music markets. And it is a problem, but I think the thing we do is like we have something called Britlist, which has been a great thing for the last 8 years, where we specifically pick brand new British artists to support, and we say to those artists, we're going to give you 3 playlist support. Well, now it's basically 2 years of playlist support, and we're going. There's no like, oh, will they support, won't they support, which has been really helpful to the UK labels to know that we're on a journey with them. We're not just going to play one song and stop playing them. Miles Smith is a really good example of that. Stargazing goes kind of bonkers in the UK and around Europe. That goes really big. The next one sort of does well, but doesn't do as well. And then I think there's a lot of nerves there. We Brit listed him. We carried on that support. He's playing the main stage at Big Weekend this year. So it's that we are really aware of it, and it is something that is a problem to the UK labels. But I think it's also a UK label problem, not just a UK radio problem.
And I don't think radio will be able to fix the problem, but we will do what we can. Hence why the work has begun about the impact we can create for our artist journeys, rather than the volume of artists. It's which ones can we move the dial on so that we are helping the UK music industry create the next stars, rather than relying on America to supply them.
We are out of time, right? We're out of time. Give these guys a massive round of applause. Thank you to Alid and to Daisy and to Michael. I hope you've enjoyed the day. We've had a great day with Ben Cooper, with Dennis Clark, with Helen Thomas, and then music from Radio 1. It's been thoroughly fascinating. I hope you've enjoyed it too. The Programming Summit, hopefully, will be back next year. Meantime, we've got 2 days of fantastic sessions for you. Fill your boots, enjoy yourself. I've been Nick Goodman. Thank you very much.